Forest spirits. As dawn's first light seeped through the thick canopy, faint amber streaks illuminated the damp forest floor. A thin mist hovered low, curling around twisted roots and fallen leaves, blurring earth and sky. The forest was silent, disturbed only by a distant bird call and the soft rustling of leaves in a cool breeze. Edward moved carefully along the winding trail, each step muffled by moist ground beneath his boots. His eyes darted through shadows, vigilant for signs of movement, senses heightened by morning's quiet anticipation. He carried a small backpack, strapped snug on his shoulders with a well-used notebook tucked inside his jacket pocket. His breath formed brief clouds in the cool air as he paused, listening carefully to the subtle sounds of the forest. Despite the calm, the woods seemed alive with unseen activity, secrets hiding just out of sight. Every crack of a twig or shifting branch felt magnified in the silence, sharpening his focus. His goal today was clear: observe local wildlife patiently, record their behaviors, and gain their trust without disturbing them. He recognized that earning trust was vital for future rescue efforts, an act of subtle diplomacy in a land cautious of outsiders. As he moved deeper into the forest, his eyes caught a flash of movement ahead, causing him to slow his pace. A small, cautious figure darted behind a shrub, pausing just long enough for him to notice. His gaze narrowed not out of suspicion, but curiosity. He gently set down his pack, reaching into his pocket for a piece of bread he had brought. His actions were deliberate, calm, non-threatening, meant to convey peace rather than interference. The creature hesitated, a stray dog, its fur tangled and rough. Scars traced faint scars across its face and body, silent witnesses to past hardships. Yet, its eyes shone with cautious awareness instead of outright fear. It appeared to evaluate his intentions, muscles tense but not aggressive, ears twitching at every sound. Edward extended his hand slowly, speaking softly and calmly. "Hello there, little one," he said gently, almost whispering amid the forest sounds. The dog hesitated, ears twitching, stiffening briefly before loosening slightly. Carefully, Edward moved the bread closer, offering it as a friendly gesture. The dog sniffed cautiously, then quickly snapped up the piece, stepping back a few paces while watching him intently. Her scars became more visible as she shifted old wounds, healed, but silently telling stories of resilience. She seemed to gauge his presence, her gaze assessing whether he was a threat or a potential ally. Edward stayed seated, observing her quietly with patience. "You're different from the others, aren't you?" He softly whispered, more to himself than to her. Lost, perhaps, or simply fighting to survive. His tone showed no pity, only understanding. The dog he decided to name her Maggie seemed to contemplate him, her body language a mix of cautious curiosity and guarded hope. Maggie moved closer, ears perked up, eyes flickering with suspicion yet a hint of interest. Edward took out his notebook, quickly jotting notes on her appearance, scars, and wary gaze. Each detail told a part of her story, a silent witness to the hardships endured by the animals of this land. As the sun rose higher, a faint warmth emerged through the mist, easing the dawn's chill. Maggie relaxed slightly, edging forward as Edward offered her another piece of bread. Her hesitation was still evident, but hunger overcame her fears. She took a small bite, then withdrew again, tail flicking uncertainly. Edward's face showed a gentle smile. This delicate exchange, simple yet significant, marked a pivotal moment. It was the first step toward overcoming the barriers of mistrust that kept humans and animals distant. He knew such moments were rare, especially with creatures marked by past trauma. As he prepared to move on, Maggie lingered nearby, watching cautiously. Her scars told stories of pain, resilience, and yearning for connection, an unspoken plea for trust. A glimmer of hope sparked within Edward. Even in a land filled with suspicion and guarded hearts, trust could be built one small act at a time. He extended his hand again, carefully and with intention. Maggie sniffed cautiously before gently pressing her nose against his palm. No words were exchanged, only a silent understanding passing between them, a fragile but authentic beginning of a connection. Edward slowly stood up, glancing back with a quiet reassurance. The forest seemed to hold its breath, witnessing this quiet moment of trust. A new awareness blossomed from this brief exchange, suggesting change was possible. Edward turned away slowly, leaving Maggie behind, but carrying the knowledge that this meeting signaled something greater, an unspoken vow to protect, listen, and wait. As he continued along the trail, a subtle shift in his outlook took hold. He understood that patience and empathy could build bonds even in unlikely situations. Maggie's scars, once symbols of pain, now embodied resilience and the potential for trust. The woods nearby seemed to resonate with a silent hope, hinting at fresh starts amid shadows of doubt. Victor's commanding voice cut through the morning silence, steady and resolute as he approached. Edward slowly turned, clutching a small food bag, meeting the farmer's intense gaze. His rough, dirt-covered hands trembled slightly as he gestured to the scattered hay and soil around him. His brow furrowed, a mix of suspicion and frustration on his face. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" Victor asked, his voice gruff but not unkind. The smell of earth and straw clung to him, proof of hours spent working the fields. His eyes moved to the food in Edward's grip, then to Maggie, who stayed at a cautious distance, ears flicking as she sniffed the air. Edward carefully moved closer, offering the food. "I'm here to assist. I brought some for Maggie, as she seems hungry." His tone was gentle and polite, showing real care amid the growing tension. His gaze briefly shifted to the dog behind the bush, eyes cautious yet interested. Victor's jaw tightened. "Assist? You're not from around here. This land isn't for outsiders to meddle in." His fists were clenched tightly, then loosened, struggling to keep from pushing Edward away. "You don't understand what is best for this place." Edward took a deep, steady breath, firm yet determined. "My only goal is to keep Maggie safe. She's been hurt before, I can tell that. She needs kindness, not doubt." His words lingered, trying to bridge the growing divide of mistrust. The farmer's eyes tightened, scrutinizing Edward's face for any signs of lying or vulnerability. "You believe you can just come in and set everything right. Creatures like her are born to be wild, that's how they should be." His tone carried a touch of bitterness shaped by years of protective instinct. Maggie shifted slightly, her ears flicking anxiously as she kept her nose to the ground but watched Edward intently. Her subtle presence held a weight neither man could dismiss, an unspoken sign that trust, though fragile, might be possible. Victor moved closer, lowering his voice, but with suspicion lurking underneath. "I don't trust outsiders, especially those with broken promises. Keep off my land and stay away from her." His words sounded definitive, but a hint of doubt revealed his inner struggle. Edward's shoulders stiffened. I see your worries, but I won't give up on her. She's endured enough. I notice she's beginning to trust again, even slightly. Gently, he set the food near Maggie's hiding place, careful not to scare her. Victor hesitated, looking at the offering, then back at Edward. His fist clenched involuntarily, torn between reluctance and recognizing the genuine sincerity in the young man's tone. Your persistence concerns me. You believe you can alter what's natural. Edward nodded gradually, voice steady. I can't change everything instantly, but I believe in gradual progress. Gaining her trust might also help earn yours. We both want her safe, right? A lengthy silence followed. Victor's eyes showed stubbornness, but a hint of curiosity appeared. His focus moved to Maggie's cautious approach, her nose twitching as she moved closer to the food, her eyes showing cautious trust. At last, Victor exhaled through his nose, more of a sigh of resignation than anger. If she eats, I'll keep watch. But don't assume I trust you entirely. Crossing that line will bring consequences. Edward nodded, thankful for this small gesture. Thanks, I'll be cautious. I only want to help her recover. Maggie hesitated briefly, then moved forward, tense but motivated by the smell of food. She gently nudged the offering with her nose, then cautiously took a bite, glancing between Edward and Victor. This small act seemed to build a delicate connection, an unspoken sign that trust could develop, even in unlikely situations. Victor's eyes stayed on Maggie before turning to Edward. For the first time, a subtle expression appeared on his face, tentatively considering change. He remained silent, crossing his arms and watching quietly. As Maggie ate steadily, Edward stayed calm, knowing this was just the start. The farmer's suspicion lingered, but a spark of understanding was sown. Patience was key now, and Edward was ready to wait. The sun rose higher, casting a warm light over the peaceful landscape, suggesting that hope could quietly take root amid mistrust. Fragile trust began to grow, slowly transforming their delicate world one cautious step at a time. As the last sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, long shadows stretched across the clearing. Edward moved deliberately, quietly navigating the tangled branches and fallen leaves covering the ground, his steps cautious and purposeful. The overcast sky muted the colors, cloaking the scene in gray, deepening the silence and sharpening his senses to every sound. He paused briefly, listening carefully for any movement or noise. His task was clear, but danger loomed. Suddenly, a faint crackling interrupted the silence. Edward froze, instinctively dropping to one knee behind a fallen log, narrowing his eyes as he surveyed the area. His hand instinctively reached into his pocket, clutching the small flashlight he carried. Its faint glow could either alert or comfort, depending on his approach. He understood that moving blindly risked startling the creature he sought, so he held his breath, waiting for another sign. Then he spotted her Maggie, a small trembling figure pressed against thick bushes, her body tense and cautious. Her coat was torn, dirt smudged across her face and limbs, and her ribs protruded sharply beneath her matted fur. Her ears flicked nervously at every sound, her eyes darting anxiously with fear and fatigue. She was clearly a survivor, battered by recent hardships, a testament to her resilience. Edward gradually moved further behind cover, his actions slow and non-threatening. He spoke softly to avoid alarming her, saying, "It's okay, girl. I won't hurt you, even though she might not understand." Carefully, he took a piece of bread wrapped in cloth from his bag and gently extended his hand, placing it a few steps away from her trembling form. Maggie hesitated, sniffing the air with flared nostrils and tension in her body. Then, driven by cautious curiosity, she inched forward, each step deliberate. She stopped a foot from the bread, looking at Edward with wary suspicion. Her muscles tensed, but after a moment, she quickly took the morsel and retreated behind the bushes, her body still trembling. Her eyes stayed fixed on him, a quiet, unspoken feeling passing between perhaps hope or cautious trust. Edward remained still, watching her patiently. He saw her tail flick nervously, her hind legs twitching as if ready to run. He understood her hesitation. Her injuries told of recent violence, deep scars across her sides, raw patches, and the faint smell of dried blood in the damp air. Her strength was clear, but so was her fragility. He knew he must earn her trust more convincingly. Slowly, he moved closer, carefully avoiding startling her further. Maggie's body tensed again, but she didn't pull back. Instead, she took a hesitant step forward, allowing him to close the gap. His gaze softened as he examined her scars and trembling form, an image of survival despite overwhelming odds. She let out a soft whimper and pressed her body against the cold ground, seeking solace from its rough surface. Her eyes glinted with exhaustion and fear-pain that words couldn't fully express. Edward's chest tightened as empathy flooded him. He sensed her wounds went beyond flesh-carrying scars of past trauma, loss, and ongoing struggle. He reached into his pocket again, pulling out a small water flask. Gently, he poured a few drops into his hand and offered her the life-saving liquid. Maggie hesitated briefly before cautiously licking the droplets, her tongue nervously eager. This simple gesture of trust felt monumental, another step in their delicate bond. As she drank, her trembling eased slightly, though her body remained tense and cautious. Edward watched her resilience, her refusal to surrender completely to despair. His thoughts returned to her story, what had brought her here, battered and scarred. What conflicts had she endured before this moment? Her scars, both visible and hidden, seemed to tell stories of survival, battles with predators, humans, or maybe both. He surveyed the clearing again, noticing broken branches and the faint blood scent marking her recent struggles. This was no ordinary wound. It reflected intense encounters, fights that had tested her limits. A sense of frustration and helplessness grew within him. He wished he could do more to ease her pain. Yet, dwelling on what cannot be changed seemed pointless now. He focused on the present. Maggie's eyes met his, cautious but gradually trusting. He extended his hand again, not to touch, but to offer reassurance. Her eyes briefly examined his face, then shifted away and returned, as if evaluating her options. After a pause, she loosened her posture slightly, her gaze still cautious but less guarded. A sudden gust of wind rustled the leaves, and a distant cry sounded among the trees. Maggie tensed, instinctively stepping back, her body tense and ready to run. Edward recognized her reaction, an instinct born from survival. He remained perfectly still, his presence steady and unwavering. This delicate yet crucial moment marked a key turning point. As Maggie's trembling eased and her body relaxed a bit more, Edward sensed a glimmer of hope. She had endured so much her scars served not only as wounds, but as symbols of her strength. Her journey was far from finished, and with patience and kindness, he believed he could help her find healing. He continued kneeling, observing her relax gradually, her eyes still wary but less afraid. As evening fell and darkness deepened in the forest, Edward saw that Orr's scars were not just marks of suffering, but symbols of her strength. Her resilience had kept her alive, and now it might serve as the foundation for healing. In that peaceful moment, he realized her wounds, both visible and hidden, could inspire hope rather than remind of pain. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, a flicker of possibility appeared in his mind. He understood Orr's trust was fragile, yet he was determined to keep trying, offering patience, help, and understanding. When Maggie shifted slightly and their eyes met again, Edward silently vowed to stay by her side not as a rescuer wielding authority, but as an ally, someone who believed in her strength and in the chance for recovery. Shadows grew longer around them, but within that darkness, a new bond had begun, founded on resilience, trust, and quiet hope that even the deepest wounds could someday heal. The midday sun cast a warm golden light over the bustling village square, where the scent of fresh bread mixed with ripe fruit aroma. Children's laughter rang out as they darted among market stalls, their colorful clothing forming a lively mosaic on the dusty stones. Vendors called out prices, haggling and bargaining amid fluttering fabrics swaying in the breeze. Beneath this cheerful chaos, Edward detected a subtle undercurrent of tension and underlying cautiousness, reflected in wary glances exchanged among villagers. Standing near the intricate fountain, he surveyed the crowd when a soft voice interrupted his focus. "Hello, Edward." Elena approached, her face gentle with warmth, hands folded before her. Her presence radiated calm, a steadying force amid the unrest he had become more aware of. He turned with a tentative smile. "Hello, Elena." She tilted her head, observing him with kind curiosity. "I've noticed you working with animals recently, and I believe it's courageous." Her tone was kind but genuine, conveying quiet encouragement. "Not all villagers comprehend your goals." Edward took a deep breath, looking at the busy market stalls where locals traded and kids enjoyed themselves. "It's a gradual journey, and Victor stays wary, perceiving my involvement as a threat to his territory." Elena nodded thoughtfully, understanding Victor's suspicion. "His land sustains him, and he guards it fiercely, yet I believe many here secretly desire peace, even if they rarely admit it openly." A spark of hope lit in Edward, but he kept his tone calm. "Gaining trust takes time. I'm prepared to wait, but I need patience." She moved closer, voice softening. "Maybe I can assist." "I've always believed collaboration and finding common ground are the way forward." Her eyes looked into his face. "If the community sees you're here to help, not hurt, they may start to open up." He paused briefly, then agreed. "That would mean a lot to me. I've been trying to reach out, but don't want to overwhelm them and push them away." Elena's eyes softened and a slight smile appeared. "Sometimes small actions carry the most impact." She pointed toward the children playing nearby, supporting their activities, listening to their stories. Those are the things that really connect people. A gentle smile formed on Edward's face. "I'll give it a shot." Suddenly, a group of children giggled and ran past, their colorful clothes adding a lively splash to the scene. Elena observed them softly smiling. Kids are curious about you. They see more than adults. A young girl tugged her mother's arm, whispering excitedly. Children often perceive beyond barriers and doubts better than us. Elena laughed quietly. Indeed, they do. They pick up on the details adults miss. A shadow appeared on the square's edge as Victor moved closer, with a serious, unreadable look. The farmer's presence highlighted the ongoing tension, but Edward remained resolute. Victor paused a few steps back, arms crossed. "You're still here," he said bluntly, rough-voiced, "getting involved with things that aren't your business." Edward looked him in the eyes firmly. "I'm here because I care about the land, the animals, and the future we're building." Victor scoffed dismissively. "This isn't your place. Animals aren't your concern." "Leave before you create more chaos," Elena said firmly but calmly, stepping between them. "Victor, Edward isn't here to cause trouble. He's trying to understand what's happening in the woods. Perhaps we can find a way to cooperate." Victor's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Team up with someone who's just meddling." Edward took a steady breath, sensing the seriousness of the moment. "I'm not here to interfere. My only goal is to protect the animals and honor the land." Victor's jaw clenched. "Animals are wild. They belong where they are." "Do words change that?" Elena's tone stayed firm. "Respect is the starting point for understanding. We may disagree now, but that doesn't mean we won't eventually agree." Victor looked back and forth at her and Edward with clear distrust, and finally sneered, "You're just wasting your time." Without saying another word, he abruptly turned and walked away, leaving a heavy silence behind. Elena exhaled slowly, glancing at Edward. "He's cautious, but I think he's not entirely closed off." Edward nodded, a spark of determination lighting inside him. "Perhaps. I just need to show him I'm here to help, not harm." She reached out, placing a comforting hand on his arm. Sometimes small steps matter the most. As Victor vanished into the crowd, Edward looked around the square, watching children's carefree laughter and murmuring conversations. A sense of hope grew within him. Perhaps Elena's words contain truth. Change begins with small acts of kindness, patience, and persistence. A young boy approached holding a freshly picked flower, offering a silent smile that hinted trust might grow unexpectedly. Edward knelt slightly, accepting the flower with a gentle nod, feeling renewed hope. That simple gesture showed progress often starts with tiny intentional steps. The community's openness was fragile but still possible to nurture. Step by step, he could build bridges, forge alliances, and guide their shared future toward understanding. Tension lingered, but beneath it, a seed of possibility was ready to root if nurtured with patience and genuine care. A faint breeze stirred the damp leaves, whispering through the trees and making Edward's nerves tense. The last sunset rays faded into creeping fog, blurring the line between forest and sky into a muted, ghostly shade. Shadows flickered among the trees, and every rustle sounded unnaturally loud, a stark reminder of the delicate silence that could break any time. Edward's eyes nervously scanned the terrain, muscles tensed as he hid behind a fallen log, senses heightened for danger. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, competing with the subtle hum of the evening air. Suddenly, a loud snap of twigs interrupted the quiet, too close, too deliberate. Edward froze, instinct taking over. His gaze searched the underbrush for movement or any sign of the threat nearby. The forest seemed to hold its breath, shadows lengthening as fog thickened. Then, a distant echo shattered the silence gunfire, abrupt and piercing, ripping through the calm with brutal immediacy. Edward's stomach tightened and his mind raced. The sound confirmed his fears. Hunters were close, posing a direct danger to Maggie and everything he aimed to protect. The muzzle flashes and gunshot echoes indicated they were nearby, perhaps even circling him. He leaned against the tree's rough bark, gripping his trembling hands to steady himself. The fresh, muddy footprints he saw earlier pointed toward the deeper shadows of the woods. Their direction, along with the gunfire, suggested they were moving erratically, possibly trying to flank him or find a better position. Every instinct pushed him to act, find Maggie, warn her, and escape before the hunters caught up. A cold wind blew through, bringing a damp chill that penetrated his jacket, sending a prickling sensation over his skin. He hugged himself tightly, fighting off rising panic. The shadows lengthened and merged as the fog thickened. His surroundings shrank to this critical moment of danger. Reaching into his pocket, Edward felt the small battered whistle he kept for emergencies. The metallic touch served as a calm anchor amidst the chaos. Carefully, he brought it to his lips and made a soft, urgent call, a signal intended for Maggie if she was nearby. The delicate sound was quickly swallowed by the mist, but he silently hoped she would hear and respond. He knew he couldn't stay in place much longer. Each second increased the risk. He needed a plan quickly. Slowly rising to his feet, knees trembling but determination steady, Edward scanned the fog for any sign of movement. A flicker of color, a shifting shadow, anything that could lead him to Maggie or reveal the hunter's position. The surrounding forest was a maze of hidden paths and silent danger, broken only by distant cracking or the whispering wind. Suddenly, a faint rustling drew his attention. He froze once more, muscles tense. The sound was deliberate, something or someone moving through the bushes from the north. Edward's breath caught as he quickly ducked behind a thick shrub, peering through the leaves. His eyes widened at the sight of a shifting shadow, big, heavy, clearly human. The figure paused briefly, then moved carefully, the faint crunch of dry leaves revealing its approach. The gunfire came from that direction. Edward's mind raced. Was it a hunter or someone else? The uncertainty haunted him. The danger was immediate, and his instincts urged quick action. He slowly retrieved a small flashlight, switching it on to cast a narrow beam through the fog. The beam cut a narrow line through the foliage, revealing muddy footprints leading further into the forest. He kept the flashlight steady, searching for clues about the approaching figure's purpose. A loud crack suddenly echoed nearby, this time closer. Edward's stomach tightened as he recognized the sound, a gunshot, followed by the metallic impact of a bullet hitting a nearby tree. His heartbeat quickened. The hunters had spotted him, or possibly Maggie, and were closing in. The realization hit hard. Hesitation could be fatal. Without delay, Edward moved rapidly toward the densest part of the woods, where Maggie might be hidden. He navigated quickly, slipping behind a fallen log and crouching low to avoid detection. His mind raced, considering options: call out, run away, or hide. The risk of exposure and the sounds of pursuit made every decision dangerous. Instead, he remained hidden, controlling his breath and listening carefully. He examined the terrain, looking for a way to intercept or escape. The fog concealed his movements, but also blurred his outline, providing a brief advantage. If he could reach Maggie before the hunters arrived, he might still have a chance. Every moment was critical. Suddenly, through the fog, he heard a distant shout, an unclear cry or command. Was it from a hunter or someone else? His senses intensified. If another person was nearby, a local or protector, hope rekindled. Clutching the whistle tightly, he prepared to activate it if needed. A brief movement caught his attention, a small dark shape darting through the trees. A flash of fur, possibly Maggie or another animal escaping danger. His hope grew, strengthening his resolve. He moved cautiously, avoiding snapping twigs and silencing his steps, aware that any sound could give him away. The continuous gunfire reminded him of Maggie's scars, her trembling form, and the suffering she'd endured. The thought of losing her now caught in crossfire or overtaken by hunters was almost unbearable. He had to reach her quickly. At last, he saw a faint movement, something pressed against a fallen log. Recognizing her trembling silhouette instantly, relief washed over him, mixed with urgent determination. He cautiously moved ahead and softly said, "Maggie, it's me. Stay still. I'm here to assist." She paused, then gradually lifted her head, her eyes examining his face. Her body stiffened at his resolute look. Edward advanced, aware they couldn't delay. The threat was imminent and the hunters were near. A loud shout broke the quiet from afar, making his heart race. He understood they had only moments left. Extending his hand, he offered support. "Come to me now. We must move quietly." Maggie paused briefly, then with trembling effort crawled toward him. The fog concealed their figures, but Edward noticed her determination growing, despite her fragile state. They continued forward together, aiming for the denser cover of the trees. As they advanced, a sudden burst of gunfire erupted closer than before. Edward ducked behind a sturdy trunk, pulling Maggie close. Shadows seemed to tighten around them, the danger imminent. The forest, once a sanctuary, had turned into a battleground. Their escape relied on each breath and step. He quickly looked at Maggie, silently vowing to protect her at all costs. The fog shrouded them, obscuring their figures as they hurried forward, aiming to disappear before the hunters arrived. Night deepened, filled with uncertainty and threats, but Edward's determination remained firm. He refused to let fear extinguish their hope for safety. The forest was veiled in darkness, with shadows flickering with unseen movement. Edward advanced cautiously, every step purposeful, listening for any faint sound. Maggie stayed close, tense and trembling, holding his sleeve as a lifeline. The damp air clung to their skin, mixing with the scent of moss and decay, hiding their presence but heightening the oppressive silence. Edward's thoughts raced, recalling the terrain they'd studied earlier. The narrow trail, barely visible under the thick canopy with its hidden twists, was their only chance to evade the hunters. His grip on Maggie's arm tightened not from strength, but to steady them both amid their pounding hearts. Each crack of a twig and distant branch snap heightened their alertness. Suddenly, Maggie's breath caught as a sharp rustling sounded to their right. Edward immediately froze, dropping into a crouch and pulling her down behind nearby tangled bushes. His eyes quickly scanned the source of the noise, which disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared. He exhaled slowly, fighting the rush of adrenaline, and silently signaled her to remain still. The faint glow of flashlights flickered through the trees, accompanied by muffled voices giving hurried, clipped commands. The hunters were drawing near. Edward's mind sharpened knowing the forest maze-like layout. He pinpointed a narrow gap between two trees ahead, offering a fleeting chance to escape unnoticed. He whispered urgently, "Come with me," his voice barely audible among the rustling leaves. Maggie hesitated, fear in her eyes, but he gently pushed her onward, leading her carefully through the underbrush. Twigs crackled beneath their steps, each sound risking detection. Shadows seemed to pulse with the approaching danger. Moving purposefully, their hearts racing in sync, every step was cautious. Edward recalled stories of hunted animals, how they depended on instinct and terrain for survival. Now, those lessons became their lifeline. He knew the forest's secrets, its hidden spots and natural cover, but also its perils, roots that could trip them, branches that might reveal their position. Suddenly, a beam of light pierced the darkness, revealing a crouched figure behind a fallen log. Edward's breath caught. He quietly pulled Maggie behind the cover, pressing her against the rough bark. The flashlight's beam wavered as the hunter's rough voice shouted, "Spread out. Find them. Stay silent." The urgency was clear, but their footsteps were cautious and deliberate. Edward's heart pounded loudly. He knew they had only moments before being found. Carefully, he guided Maggie toward a small crack between the logs and escape route he had seen earlier. As they moved into the shadows, Edward quickly considered how to turn this small opening into a true escape opportunity. He recalled the terrain's dangers, roots that could cause trips, branches that might snap, revealing their position. He signaled silence with a finger to his lips. Moving close to the log, he stayed in the shadows, guiding Maggie through the dense underbrush. Every step was careful, every sound minimized. His eyes scanned the terrain, seeking the next hiding spot. Suddenly, a loud crack rang out beneath him, a branch breaking under his weight. His heart halted. Time stretched as he instinctively pulled Maggie behind a thick bush, keeping her flat against the ground. The flashlight beam paused, flickered, then continued as their pursuers' voices faded away. Edward exhaled slowly, muscles tense from exertion and adrenaline. He cautiously looked through the foliage, searching the darkness for any signs of pursuit. The danger had been narrowly avoided, but he knew better than to relax. The forest was a confusing maze, and the hunters could return at any moment. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their narrow escape. Maggie's trembling body pressed against him, her small hands gripping his shirt tightly. He tightened his hold, aware they couldn't stay put. The threat remained, and their situation had not yet changed. Carefully, he stood up and scanned the area for a new escape route. The woods presented both hiding places and dead ends. Ahead, he saw a dense thicket that could provide good cover. With careful determination, he led Maggie silently, senses heightened. Suddenly, behind them, faint movement indicated the hunter's return. Edward quickly turned, instincts taking over. He spotted a shadow slipping between trees and opening. Without delay, he pushed Maggie into a dense bush, holding her tight. "Stay low," he whispered urgently, eyes locked on the approaching figures. A flashlight beam swept past, revealing a hunter's stern face, focused, ruthless, relentless. They were dangerously near now. Edward's thoughts raced. He knew the terrain well, but the risk of being seen was high. The woods were a maze of tangled roots, branches, and shadows, each possibly a trap. His aim was to stall, to find an escape without risking another confrontation. Moving along the forest's edge, he chose a route away from the main path, seeking a less obvious exit. Maggie clung tightly, her small hands clutching his shirt as they pushed through the underbrush. Every step was purposeful, every breath kept in check. A sudden crack of a twig underfoot shattered the tense silence. Edward's stomach tightened and his heart pounded as he instinctively pulled Maggie behind a thick bush. The flashlight beam hesitated, then moved on, voices fading into the ambient sounds of the wood's owl calls and rustling leaves. For now, they had escaped detection, but the threat was far from over. Edward exhaled slowly, muscles sore from the effort. He scanned ahead for the next safe haven, knowing they had to keep moving. Another encounter was inevitable. The forest was their battleground, and tonight, resilience and quick wits were their only weapons. Rising, he guided Maggie along a hidden trail, feeling a flicker of hope. They had survived this moment, but the real challenge was yet to come, avoiding the hunters permanently, uncovering who was after them, and turning their danger into an advantage. Shadows around them seemed to whisper promises of safety, but Edward knew that their resilience, adaptability, and unity would determine if they escaped or fell. With cautious steps, they moved further into the unknown, their fate uncertain, but their determination unshaken. Dawn's first light peeked through gaps in the weathered planks and shattered glass of the abandoned barn. Dust motes danced in the cold, pale air, illuminated by the faint glow of sunrise breaking through the broken roof. Inside, Maggie rested peacefully among the tangled hay, her breathing calm after hours of alertness. Her scars, once tense with fear, looked softer in her rest, as if this quiet moment eased her pain. Nearby, Edward sat with knees drawn up, watching her but lost in thought. A deep silence enveloped them, broken only by the distant wind and creaking wood in the still morning. Edward replayed the day's chaos, the narrow escape from hunters and fleeting safety. A fragile hope flickered, yet doubt lingered. Was this temporary refuge enough? Could he truly protect Maggie here, or was this just a brief break before they had to run again into the shadows of the forest? He shifted slightly, careful not to wake her, and studied her peaceful face. The tension in his shoulders eased a bit, but the burden of responsibility still pressed heavily. The barn, with its peeling paint and splintered beams, was a relic of a bygone era, an unlikely sanctuary now. It offered only a fragile barrier against the outside threats, a temporary shield that could be shattered at any moment. Reaching out, he gently brushed a stray strand of hay-covered hair from her shoulder, his touch hesitant but tender. Maggie stirred, eyelids fluttering open to reveal eyes still clouded with wariness. Her gaze flicked around the dim interior, instinctively scanning for danger. When she saw Edward nearby, a soft exhale escaped her, an unconscious sign of trust. She shifted, pressing her body closer to him, craving warmth and reassurance amid the uncertainty. Edward hesitated, then spoke softly, his voice rough from disuse. "We're safe for now, but this isn't over." His words lingered in the air, heavy with doubt. He met her gaze, feeling his promise's weight deepen. His thoughts raced, stay here risking detection or slip into the forest where unseen threats waited. The choice knotted him nonstop. He knew the hunters wouldn't stop easily. Their chase was relentless. The woods, once a sanctuary, now felt like a war zone, every leaf rustle or distant shout, a reminder of constant danger. Still, giving up was not an option. Maggie relied on his resolve, on hope that a way beyond this despair existed, even if hidden. Taking a deep breath, Edward's voice grew more steady, though tinged with exhaustion. I can't guarantee safety, but I won't abandon you. We stay here tonight, rest, reflect, strategize. His words were low but determined, a promise to himself as well as her. Dawn's first light cast a faint golden hue on his face, revealing lines of fatigue intertwined with quiet resolve. Maggie responded with a gentle nudge, her head resting against his hand. Her eyes, still guarded, conveyed understanding, a silent acknowledgement that they faced this danger together. Their fragile yet genuine bond grew stronger in that quiet moment, rooted in mutual dependence. Outside, the forest remained silent but vigilant, shadows flickering at the edges of his sight. The sounds of hunters' footsteps and distant voices haunted his thoughts, a constant reminder of the danger they faced. Edward understood they couldn't delay much longer. Moving now risked detection, but staying too long increased their chances of being discovered. The threat was real, yet his resolve to protect Maggie remained strong. As the morning went on, a new resolve formed inside him. The barn, with its peeling paint and dusty nooks, was only a temporary hideout. It represented their courage. Amid the shadows and quiet, he made a firm decision: he wouldn't abandon Maggie. Not now, not ever. Carefully, he got on his knees and looked through a narrow gap between the boards. The forest beyond was shrouded in a light mist, with shadows shifting in the gentle breeze. The distant sounds of pursuit, the crashing footsteps and shouted commands highlighted the urgency. Yet, he glimpsed a ray of hope, an opportunity to develop a new plan based on patience, trust, and cautious optimism. A gentle breeze rustled the hay, carrying the scent of moist soil and life awakening. Edward briefly closed his eyes to ground himself in the present moment. The future remained uncertain, but his determination was unwavering. Maggie's steady breathing comforted him more than any words could. They would wait, plan, and when the time was right, take action again. As dawn fully broke, illuminating the barn with a warm golden glow, Edward decided to remain. For Maggie, for himself, because giving up was not an option. Beyond darkness and doubt, a hint of peace awaited, and he was set to find it. They would stand firm together, regardless of how long the night lasted. As dawn broke, a new understanding formed between them. Though danger still loomed outside, hope reignited inside the barn. They seized a moment of clarity and opportunity to plan, strengthen their fragile alliance, and face future hardships with renewed courage. Their bond, tested but unbroken, grew stronger as they prepared to endure the storm, knowing survival relied on patience, trust, and unwavering determination. The midday sun cast a soft light through the village hall's narrow windows, gently illuminating the tense faces inside. Whispers of concern and cautious curiosity spread among the gathering, each person contemplating the unexpected assembly. Edward stood at the front, his posture steady despite the weight on his chest. His gaze swept across the crowds unwary, others openly hostile, each reflecting years of suspicion and fear. Elena organized this gathering after numerous discussions, aiming to bridge the growing gap between villagers and the outsider who spoke of coexistence. She believed honest conversation could sow understanding, but she knew words alone wouldn't erase generations of mistrust. Edward came with a clear goal to establish communication and demonstrate that change was possible with effort. He took a deep breath to steady himself, then addressed the crowd confidently. Thank you all for being here. I realize trust here is fragile and earned carefully. I don't ask you to forget your fears or ignore your concerns. My hope is to share a perspective that might help us see this land and its creatures differently. His eyes focused on Victor, the seasoned farmer whose face was marked by skepticism, eyes narrowing as if trying to see through his words. Victor crossed his arms and leaned slightly forward. What do you expect us to do? Just let animals roam freely, ruin our crops, and ignore the consequences? His voice was gruff, filled with years of frustration and a protective instinct that wouldn't give in. Edward replied calmly, choosing his words carefully. I'm not calling for chaos or neglect. My goal is to promote understanding and find practical solutions for humans and animals to coexist peacefully. With patience, respect, and cooperation, we can reduce conflicts and possibly learn from each other's ways of life. A few villagers looked uneasy, exchanging uncertain glances. An elderly woman, her hands trembling slightly, softly said, "They've always been here, yes. But what if they pose a threat? What if animals attack or the forest spreads further onto our land? We've worked hard to build our homes here." "They are not foes," Edward said softly, his voice calming. "Most animals, including Maggie, are scared, injured, or just trying to survive. They don't mean us harm intentionally. They belong to this ecosystem, just like us. By understanding their needs, many issues can be avoided before they worsen." A thick silence filled the room as the villagers reflected on his words. Some looked down, pondering the possibilities, while Victor's face grew more stern. "You speak of understanding, but that's just a dream," he stated. "These creatures are part of the wild ecosystem. Humans are responsible for farming and maintaining ecological balance unchecked. Their freedom could lead to chaos." Edward slowly agreed, recognizing Victor's point. "Balance is essential, and that's why I'm here to restore harmony, not ruin it. Achieving it requires collective effort. Small steps such as building safe routes, reducing disturbances, and respecting territories can have a significant impact." Some villagers started nodding cautiously, seeing the value in his message. Elena moved closer, speaking with calm conviction. "Let's consider a simple start an actual demonstration. We could designate a small area where animals roam freely, observe their behavior, and determine if peaceful coexistence is achievable. It's not about losing control, but providing space for them without constant meddling." A few villagers exchanged wary yet receptive looks. An elderly man leaning on his cane looked up thoughtfully. "That could be worth attempting. But what about the hunters, the ones hunting for trophies or viewing animals as pests? They won't accept this easily." Victor's gaze shifted toward the door as if waiting for someone. "They will never alter. That's simply their nature." Edward kept his tone steady despite pressing his lips together. "Change is hard, and I realize not everyone will agree immediately. However, without trying, we'll never find what's truly achievable. The forest and its inhabitants are part of our future, whether we accept it or not. Ignoring them only leads to more conflict and pain." A pause lingered in the hall as villagers looked at one another, some hesitant, others resigned. Edward felt a moment of doubt. Was his message actually resonating with them? Is there a real possibility for genuine change? He understood this was only the start and progress might take time, but he refused to lose hope. Elena broke the silence calmly but firmly. Trust develops gradually, step by step. Maybe tomorrow we can walk through the woods together, see what's happening firsthand without judgments or biases. No promises, no accusations, just honest observation. Gradually, a few more villagers nodded, their expressions softening slightly. Victor looked away, jaw clenched, but stayed silent. The mood in the hall subtly shifted, a fragile opening against suspicion and fear. As the meeting ended, Edward felt a cautious sense of hopefulness. The villagers remained cautious, but seeds of understanding had been sown. He knew real change would take patience, persistence, and listening. Though the road was uncertain, he believed every small step and conversation brought them closer to harmony between humans and nature. Stepping into the bright afternoon, Edward took a deep breath. The challenge persisted, but he sensed progress was beginning. The villagers still resisted, yet they now glimpsed new possibilities, seeing the land and creatures differently. With patience and ongoing dialogue, harmony might become an achievable goal rather than a distant dream. He looked toward the forest edge as shadows grew longer with the setting sun. The journey toward understanding was far from complete, but hope settled in his heart for the first time. Each small victory and moment of trust advanced them toward a future of true coexistence. The sky quickly darkened as heavy clouds churned overhead, signaling an approaching storm. Winds howled through the treetops, rustling leaves wildly and causing branches to creak under the pressure. Rain started to pour down hard, splattering onto the muddy path where Edward sought shelter, each drop intensifying the chaos. His fists clenched tightly, eyes fixed on the distant figures emerging through the downpour hunters, their blurred, ominous shapes outlined against sheets of rain. His heartbeat surged not from fear, but from a strong sense of responsibility. As they pushed through the wet undergrowth, their boots crunching loudly, their rifles and hooded faces became clearer. They represented a danger not only to Maggie, injured and hidden nearby, but to the delicate balance of this forest that Edward was committed to safeguarding. He stepped forward, muscles tense, voice calm despite the tumult. "Leave her alone," he demanded, cutting through the storm's roar. His voice resonated, muffled yet firm. The hunters froze, exchanging suspicious glances. The tallest, likely their leader, raised his hand to signal a stop. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice rough amid the storm's noise. He narrowed his eyes, evaluating Edward's drenched appearance to determine if he was a threat or just an obstacle. "Someone who cares," Edward responded calmly, voice steady. "You won't find what you seek here. Turn away now." The leader snorted, lowering his rifle slightly, but keeping it aimed. "You're interfering, outsider. This is none of your concern." Edward moved closer, determination shining in his eyes. "Maggie's scared and hurt. She doesn't deserve this. I won't let you harm her or drive her off. There's no need for violence." A heavy silence fell, only interrupted by the pounding rain and distant thunder. One of the younger hunters shifted nervously, gripping his weapon more tightly. His gaze darted toward the shadows among the trees, uncertain whether to move forward or back. Lightning lit up the sky, revealing the tense faces on both sides. Edward's expression hardened. "You're endangering more than just an animal's life. These forests are fragile, destroying them could cause permanent harm. You're not simply hunting, you're tearing apart this habitat. The leader sneered and stepped closer. Nature has nothing to do with us. We do as we please. We've hunted here for years. Edward responded sharply, voice escalating. Your reckless actions endanger everything the flora, fauna, and the forest balance. You fail to see the damage, but I do, and I won't permit it. The storm's fury grew harsher, lightning flashing over their faces as tension mounted. The rain intensified, blurring the line between nature's chaos and human strife. The leader's jaw tightened, eyes burning with determination. We're not leaving without what we came for. Edward's muscles tensed, preparing for the worst. He knew he couldn't overpower armed men, but he couldn't allow them to continue destroying or harm Maggie. His mind rapidly considered his options. He needed to buy time to avoid violence without surrendering completely. Suddenly, a shadow appeared behind a thick tree. Sami, the ex-hunter now protector, stepping into view. His face was weathered yet resolute, eyes steady amid the chaos. Sami slowly raised his hands in peace, speaking calmly but firmly. Enough, Sami said, his voice cutting through the howling wind. You've come this far, but this isn't the place for you. Turn back now before things escalate further. The hunters paused, uncertain whether to confront the newcomer. Their leader's gaze shifted between Sami and Edward, weighing his options. Lightning flashed again, casting stark shadows and intensifying the scene's tension. The storm's intensity appeared to echo the escalating tension, clouds swirling as if mimicking the internal chaos. Who is this? The leader asked, narrowing his gaze once more. Someone who knows what you're doing, Sami answered softly. You're destroying what you don't understand. Leave Maggie alone and go home. An oppressive silence settled, heavy and tense. The hunters hesitated, torn between their duty and the storm's ongoing fury. Raindrops ran down their faces, erasing any remaining bravado. One of the younger hunters lowered his weapon slightly, doubt gleaming in his eyes. Finally, the leader gave a reluctant sign. We're not done yet. We'll return. His voice was icy but determined. Without speaking further, he indicated to the others to follow, stepping into the storm's grip and disappearing into the rain. As they faded into the downpour, Edward exhaled slowly, muscles trembling from holding his position. Sami came over, placing a hand on his shoulder. You handled it well, Sami said softly. They won't return tonight, but we must remain vigilant. This fight isn't finished yet. Edward nodded steadily, still watching the retreating figures. The storm's rage was calming, clouds opening to hint at clearer skies. He glanced at the muddy ground, feeling the weight of the moment settle inside him. The surrounding forest was now quiet, apart from distant water drops falling from the trees. Maggie's delicate figure, hidden nearby, was safe for now. But something had changed. The external danger was temporarily repelled, yet the moral challenge remained unresolved. His determination to protect Maggie and the forest was stronger than ever, knowing this victory was only a pause, not a conclusion. He took a deep breath, inhaling the cool, damp air. The journey ahead would be filled with new threats and tough decisions. Yet, as he glanced at Sami and the clear sky above, a calm resolve grew within him. He would remain steadfast, regardless of the difficulties, to protect this fragile world and its dependent creatures. The final rays of sunlight bathed the quiet village outskirts in warm amber, with shadows lengthening across uneven ground. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, hinting at change as night approached. Edward stayed still, his breathing slow and steady, eyes fixed on the faintly sounds of retreating footsteps echoing softly through the trees. The tension that had weighed on him for days was easing, replaced by cautious optimism from recent events. Nearby, Maggie lay relaxed, her body finally at ease after hours of watchfulness. He shifted his position carefully, moving closer, the soft crunch of his boots muffled on damp soil. His shoulders eased slightly as he watched her, noticing how her chest rose and fell with quiet rhythm. The threat they faced was fading, bringing a fragile sense of hope to him. He took a deep breath, inhaling the cool evening air, feeling the significance of the moment. Suddenly, the distant sounds of hurried footsteps and muffled voices disappeared into silence. Edward understood that the hunters, perceiving their diminishing advantage, had decided to retreat. Their withdrawal was deliberate. They had sensed resistance and deemed the risk too high. This brought relief, but also served as a warning. Though they had pulled back, the danger still lingered. He kept watching the treetops, vigilant for any signs of ongoing threat, but the surroundings seemed eerily calm, untouched by violence. A rustling in the bushes caught his attention. Instinctively, he reached into his pocket, fingers touching the familiar shape of a whistle. Tensing up, he prepared for action, but then Elena emerged from behind the trees, her face lit by the fading light. Her face remained calm, but her eyes showed worry and resolve. "I was concerned I'd find you here," she said quietly, walking cautiously closer. "Is it finished?" Edward nodded slowly, a slight smile forming on his face. "For the moment, the hunters have retreated. Maggie is secure, and that's the main thing." Elena exhaled deeply, relief evident on her face. "I always believed you could manage it. The village must understand that change can happen, even if it takes time." He gazed at Maggie, her calm breath symbolizing the fragile peace they fought to achieve. "This isn't the final chapter," he whispered. "It's only the start, I believe. Perhaps, just perhaps, things can begin to change. The villagers and hunters need to realize these animals are not foes. They are part of this land, part of us." Elena nodded firmly, her eyes unwavering. "Fear runs strong here. Change takes time and resistance is inevitable. But your actions today demonstrate that a different path exists. It's not about forcing them, it's about helping them understand." Edward looked over the landscape where sunset's last glow shimmered. A silent determination grew in him. The road ahead was tough, trust takes time, and wounds from past struggles remained. But today was a turning point. The immediate danger was gone, and Maggie's life was no longer at risk. Most importantly, he gained new insight understanding villagers' fears and their capacity for change. Suddenly, Maggie shifted, pressing her nose against Edward's hand for comfort. He softly smiled, feeling her warmth as a symbol of hope amid uncertainty. Her soft breathing reminded him that even in darkness, tiny lights can shine if only people had the courage to see. Suddenly, a faint crack from the bushes made him tense once more. His hand automatically went to the whistle, prepared to call for help or alert to danger. However, instead of an assault, Elena moved closer, her face composed yet serious. She held a small bundle and old tattered cloth with a few supplies she had collected. "I found these nearby," she said quietly. "Thought they might help if things get worse again." I also spoke with some villagers. There's a growing sense that change is needed, but they remain cautious. Edward accepted the bundle, nodding slowly. Good. That's a good start. We must continue demonstrating that trust can be restored and cooperation achieved. Elena paused briefly before adding, the villagers' concerns aren't without reason. Some see the animals as dangers, others as symbols of disorder. But your actions today, saving Maggie and standing firm, prove that strength isn't solely about violence. It's about patience and compassion. He glanced at Maggie, her steady presence giving him confidence. We've learned that persistent effort can break resistance, not force. I plan to keep focusing on that. The real challenge now is building trust, fostering connections, and making sure this peace endures. As darkness closed in, Edward felt renewed purpose, hopeful for harmony's arrival. The danger was gone, but the journey toward understanding had just begun. Knowing change was possible, fears could soften, filled him with cautious optimism. The peaceful landscape hid a new resolve rooted in patience, dialogue, and hope. Maggie moved closer, pressing her nose to Edward's hand, craving comfort and reassurance. He gently stroked her head, feeling her trust, warm steadiness. Her presence reminded him that even dark moments could ignite kindness and a better future. Together, they watched stars appear, silent signs of ongoing change and hope. The threat was temporarily subdued, but true victory lay in hope and understanding. Edward's heart was steady, each small step leading toward peace between humans and animals. Turning to Elena, he offered a cautious smile. Today, we've taken a step forward. It's small, but enough to believe in a brighter future. She met his gaze, her eyes filled with guarded hope. Yes, it's enough. Maybe this marks the start of something lasting. They fell silent for a moment, watching the darkening sky and feeling hope settle over them. The threat was gone, but the journey ahead remained long. Still, under that quiet, star-lit night, a new sense of purpose emerged, founded on patience, trust, and the belief that harmony was achievable if they dared to pursue it. The village square buzzed with activity as the midday sun cast a warm amber light over the villagers. Weathered wooden benches held quiet chats while children ran around, their laughter echoing like chimes. Maggie eagerly followed a group of kids, her tail high and wagging, feeling the cheerful atmosphere. The mood seemed lighter than before, more open and less guarded. Edward stepped onto a sturdy platform near the square's center, feeling the significance of the moment. His eyes scanned the crowd, familiar faces, some cautious, others watching carefully, with a few beginning to show tentative hope. Elena stood beside him, steady and encouraging. She had organized this gathering, sensing it could be the first step toward true understanding. "Thank you all for coming," Edward said, his voice calm but resolute. "Today, we have a chance to listen and share our fears and hopes. I want to prove that coexistence isn't just a dream, it's something we can achieve through our actions and decisions." He paused, letting his message sink in as silence filled the room. The villagers exchanged glances, some expressing doubt, others curiosity. A few nodded cautiously, showing tentative acceptance. Edward's gaze stayed on Victor, who stood at the back with crossed arms, expression unreadable, but eyes sharply fixed on Maggie and Edward. Edward met his stare steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "I understand your worries," Edward said. "Many see animals like Maggie as threats or pests, but they are part of this land and our community. My aim is to guide us toward living peacefully, respecting each other's boundaries and needs. Maggie gently nudged Edward's hand, sensing his genuine sincerity. Her tail gently flicked, and a young girl reached out to pet her, eyes full of wonder. Edward softly smiled, valuing this small moment of trust. It proved that confidence could grow with proper care. From the crowd shadows, Victor's gaze stayed fixed on Maggie and Edward. His jaw tightened slightly, but his eyes showed doubt and curiosity. Edward noticed and gave a quiet nod, silently reassuring him. Victor's stance eased slightly, hinting he was willing to listen despite his doubts. Encouraged, some villagers moved closer, holding tools or baskets with produce. One woman, Elena's neighbor, hesitated before speaking, her voice calm but firm. I've seen animals like Maggie rate our fields, she admitted, and it's hard to believe they won't cause more harm. Edward nodded, recognizing her worries. That's a valid point. However, with patience and proper care, we can find ways to protect both our crops and animals. It's about understanding their behaviors and needs similar to how we relate to each other. A younger, more open-minded man stepped forward. My father used to say that animals are part of the land, just like us. Maybe it's time we stop seeing them as threats and start seeing them as neighbors. The crowd murmured, some uncertain. Small acts of kindness appeared. An older man gave Edward a piece of bread, a woman offered herbs, and a boy gently petted Maggie. Edward knelt and looked at the boy kindly, speaking softly. She's friendly, just needs some patience, Edward softly said. The boy nodded eagerly, eyes shining with new understanding. Maggie licked his hand, causing a joyful giggle. The moment bridged fear and acceptance. Elena stepped forward, speaking confidently. Change can be tough, but maybe it's time to try something new. We might organize patrols to protect our fields, share knowledge about animal care, and look out for each other's safety. A wave of agreement swept through the group. Some villagers told stories of past conflicts and hopes for peace. The atmosphere shifted from suspicion to cautious cooperation, a first step toward unity. Victor finally stepped closer, his face softer and less guarded. Maybe you're right, Edward, he quietly acknowledged. I've noticed animals here frightened, wild, but not necessarily harmful. If we can find ways to protect our land without destroying what's left, I'm willing to give it a shot. Edward extended his hand, which Victor hesitated briefly before gripping firmly. Together, we can make this work, Edward assured. As the sun rose higher, villagers gathered tools, baskets, nets, and makeshift barriers ready for collective action. Children played nearby, chasing each other and Maggie, who ran after them with joyful energy. The scene reflected a renewed sense of purpose. At the edge of the square, Elena and Edward watched the scene unfold, sharing a quiet, relieved glance. For the first time, signs of hope appeared, an opening to true community. A breeze brought the aroma of fresh soil and blossoms, symbolizing small, purposeful steps toward growth. Edward felt a growing sense of optimism. Change was gradual, sometimes uncertain, but it was underway. He recognized obstacles still ahead, old fears, stubborn routines, lingering mistrust. Still, the community had taken its initial collective step toward unity. These connections could serve as a guiding light, showing that even deep fears could be overcome if hearts were open to listening and trusting. As the day progressed, sounds of collaboration and shared joy resonated throughout the village square. A new chapter was quietly unfolding, founded on patience, effort, and fragile hope for a better future within reach. Dawn's first light gently filtered through the trees, casting a soft glow over the peaceful clearing where Edward and Maggie stood silently. The silent forest around them was alive only with the soft movement of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. Fresh air filled the space, carrying faint harmonious songs of waking birds. Maggie rested peacefully at Edward's feet, her muscles relaxed after days of stress and danger. Edward remained still, gazing toward the distant horizon, a rare tranquility taking hold of him. Recent weeks had been a wild ride full of uncertainty, suffering, and fleeting hope. Their escape left marks on Maggie's body, each one a reminder of the battles she fought. Nevertheless, her eyes now conveyed a gentle trust, slowly blossoming amid the chaos. Edward focused on her face, noticing subtle transformations, proof that their bond was growing even in this delicate moment. He shifted slightly, stretching his legs and taking a slow, deep breath. The quiet surrounding them sharply contrasted with the tumult they had survived. No distant shouts or step noises, only the soft hum of life waking up. For the first time in a while, he felt relief from responsibility, replaced by hope that their bond could start anew. The ancient forest seemed to echo this feeling, whispering that even battered hearts could heal. A gentle breeze caused leaves to dance around them, sharing secrets from the distant woods. Edward reached out, gently touching Maggie's fur, feeling her warmth beneath his hand. The moment was delicate, fragile, yet meaningful, filled with silent understanding. He knew obstacles lay ahead, but for now, the immediate danger was gone, replaced by a calm rooted in trust. As the sun rose higher, small birds jumped between branches, their songs offering reassurance. Edward closed his eyes briefly, letting the melodies settle deep within him. The past had shown him fear and doubt, but also the strength of connection, how even broken souls could find comfort in each other. This peaceful moment confirmed that truth. He gazed at Maggie with a gentle expression, her eyes sparkling with curiosity and trust. A sincere smile appeared on his face, quiet but meaningful, promising that he would stay strong and their bond would endure future storms. The surrounding forest seemed alive with harmony, its rhythm reflecting his growing hope. Suddenly, a distant cry broke the morning silence, a warning from the woods. Edward's senses heightened instinctively. The peaceful scene quickly shattered as he assessed the area, sensing imminent danger. His heart pounded, yet he moved intentionally, subtly gesturing to Maggie with a slight head tilt. The calm they had known was short-lived. New threats lay just beyond sight. Reaching into his pocket, he grasped a small piece of dried fruit, not for comfort, but as a potential tool to offer Maggie if necessary. Carefully, he reached out his hand but paused, uncertain if distracting her was wise. Instead, he kept his fingers ready to act. Maggie glanced at him, sensing his change in posture, her body stiffening slightly. The forest sounds faded into a tense silence. Edward's mind raced with potential dangers, hunters, rival groups, or old enemies. He knew they couldn't stay here long. This fragile peace was only temporary. His aim was to steer Maggie away from vulnerability, preparing for what lay ahead without causing alarm. With a swift, firm gesture, he signaled her to follow. He rose cautiously, his eyes scanning the thick foliage for movement, staying low and blending into the shadows, senses on high alert. Maggie instinctively moved up beside him, her eyes fixed on the forest ahead. Their mutual trust now served a survival purpose. They pried through the undergrowth, avoiding visible paths and staying concealed among the trees. Distant sounds intensified footsteps, voices, leaves crunching under heavy boots. Edward quickly considered their choices: confront, escape, or hide. Facing them was dangerous, fleeing could lead to unknown terrain. He opted for the latter, directing Maggie to a dense bush where they could watch without being noticed. Once hidden, Edward reflected on their predicament. The calm morning had been a short respite, an indication that hope still existed amidst chaos. Their bond grew stronger, but the approaching danger highlighted the uncertainty of what lay ahead. He knew that trust was delicate but vital, with every cautious move possibly preventing disaster. During the tense silence, Maggie shifted, tense yet watchful. Her gaze locked with Edward's, silently reaffirming their bond. A spark of resolve lit within him. He understood their relationship had grown beyond mere survival to resilience, building strength to face any storm. Suddenly, Edward noticed faint movement, a figure emerging from the shadows. Recognizing a scout from their former enemies, he signaled Maggie to remain calm. His hand moved instinctively toward a makeshift weapon, but maintained a non-threatening stance, ready for the next move. This encounter would be a test of their ability to adapt and outsmart their adversaries, not a repeat of past battles. The figure hesitated, sensing their presence, then retreated into the woods. Edward exhaled slowly, easing tension while staying alert. This encounter confirmed ongoing danger, but also revealed new insights about their enemies' roots and their own resilience. They continued moving away from the scene, their senses sharpened. The morning's peace was an illusion, yet it revitalized their hope and resolve. Edward's mind clear, he realized their journey was far from over. The coming days would require patience, cunning, and mutual trust. Reaching a small clearing, Edward looked back at the forest behind them. The threat remained, but so did a renewed sense of purpose. Maggie's steady breathing nearby reassured him that, despite dangers, they could face whatever was ahead together. The wide horizon hinted at dangers and opportunities alike, but for now, they had gained a moment of clarity amid chaos. Edward offered Maggie a piece of dried fruit once more. She responded with a gentle nuzzle, her trust strengthened by his calm presence. As they shared this small gesture, he felt their shared journey, its struggles and hope become more solid. The echoes of the past still lingered, but they were no longer overpowering. Instead, they became part of a bigger story, one of resilience, faith, and silent strength born from facing challenges together. The sun rose higher, lighting the way ahead. Edward understood that their real test was still to come, but he carried renewed conviction. Even in dark times, hope could be reignited through patience and steadfast trust. The surrounding woods whispered their quiet encouragement, confirming that this fragile hope was enough to carry them forward into whatever lay ahead.